Hi, welcome to tonight's review. I'm Rick Roller. I'll be your game show host this evening as we work through these series of questions and get you prepared to pass the exam the first time, okay? With me tonight is Dan Naylor, owner, operator, and the technician for our school. All-around great guy who will be in the background running everything. So let's just get started. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through a series of questions. They're all related to ownership, if you're looking for a topic. But this is the ownership segment, which you probably saw in the explanation of what this video was all about. And we're going to start with question number one. Here we go. Property owner T obtains a written easement on a neighbor's property, giving T access to the lake. Which of the following is most likely to happen? Okay, now think this through logically. You have this great property, it's near a lake, but you didn't have access to it, but you were able to go to your neighbor and say, hey, if you will give me a written easement so that I can have access to the lake and get my boats in, canoes, and whatever else I want, which do you think would happen? Okay, A, the size and value of T's property will increase. Now, what's wrong with this one is the same thing as wrong with B. A and B are both incorrect because it says the size in both those. Easements don't give you the right to increase your property holding. It just gives you more property rights that you can use the property better. But, if you only had a half acre, the fact that you got an easement from your neighbor is not going to increase that half acre. So both these cannot be right because it says the size. Okay, now we got a 50-50 chance. The value of T's property will increase, but not the size. Ooh, I like that. Well, probably because that's the right answer. And D, neither size nor value will increase. Well, of course the value will increase. You have direct access to the lake now. So correct answer is C. And that's how we're going to go through. Highlight C, please. And so that's what we're going to do tonight, is we're going to go through these series of questions. And we hope that it gives you familiarity not only with the concept, which in this one is that easements don't increase the size of your holdings. That's the concept. But it also gives you familiarity with the type of questions you will see and how to analyze these questions. So with that in line, drum roll, let's go to the next question, please. Here we go. Number 2. R sells property to T with the restriction in the sales agreement that T can only use the property for farming purposes. Now, this is an example of what? Fee simple with condition precedent. Or is it deed in lieu of? Or is it fee simple to feasible? Or is it fee remainder estate? Well, guys, this is fee simple to feasible. Now, I think that should, you got B here, but I think it should be C.
I'll double check it.
Yeah. So what happens is fee simple absolute is the most comprehensive type of ownership that you can have. So fee simple to feasible means that there's something in there that limits a little bit of that ownership. It's not fee simple absolute, it's fee simple to feasible. And so what happens here, folks, is that you have fee simple to feasible. It's not deed in lieu of. A deed in lieu of is when you're behind at the bank and you go to the bank and you say, look, I'll never be able to get straight on this again. You're not willing to rewrite the loan. So here's a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And that's what we're talking about here. This is an agreement with restriction that limits what you can actually do with the property, but it's not a deed in lieu of, it's a fee simple to feasible. Number 3, please. Here we go. Jose, welcome. Gardenia? Yeah, is that right? Welcome. And Dan, welcome. So, number 3, what is the highest form of ownership with no restrictions? Well, I gave this one away because I just defined it. It is fee simple absolute. We'll have this on the screen in just a moment. So what is the highest form of ownership with no restrictions? Fee simple absolute. Tenancy at will is a right that could be taken away or canceled. A life estate or life, that's not really a complete term there, or concurrent. That's kind of a made up term for this as well. So the most comprehensive form of ownership that you can get is fee simple absolute. And here in Utah, Of course, these are national questions, so they'll go great for any state that you happen to be in. But fee simple absolute is the same nationwide, and it is the most comprehensive type of ownership that someone can have. Let's go to number 4, please. Which of the following is a contract? An encroachment, a comparative market analysis, chattel, or a leasehold estate? Well, it's not an encroachment. An encroachment is an illegal use of someone else's property. If someone put up a fence, and rather than getting a proper survey and putting the fence in the right spot, they built the fence 4 feet into your property. So here's a fence now that's restricting you from your property, at least 4 feet of it on the side or maybe in the back. And that's an encroachment. Okay, so it's not a contract. B, a comparative market analysis. That's what a lot of agents use when they go in to put a value on a property. If you're going on a listing appointment, one of the primary things, there's 2 things that owner is really concerned about. Number 1, what will my property sell for? And number 2, what does that mean to me? What will my net be after all the expenses I have to pay? Now, I don't know how many real estate closings that your sellers have been to in the past, but most people go to that and they look at the settlement sheets and they have all these figures on it, and they don't have any idea. I know if I sell it for a higher price, somehow I'll walk away with more money. But okay, if I do sell it for this price, how much money will I walk away from? And so you have to give them kind of a net sheet so they can understand what they might actually get out of this deal. Comparative market analysis is just, hey, here's what properties are selling for in this area. Chattel is personal property, and a leasehold estate is also personal property. So which one of these is a contract? Well, my friends, obviously it's D, it's a leasehold estate. So because that is given to this tenant by contract. And it is a contract. I mean, that's what gave you your leasehold estate, is a contract. It's called a rental agreement or a lease. Let's go to number 5, please. Here we have an owner. Now, by the way, if you have a question, please throw it in the chat. Dan will pick that up and we can talk about it. So if you have a quick question about anything, because we're going through these kind of rapid pace, but that's because we have a few to do. But it's imperative to me that we could talk about anything you want tonight, including these, and we can do it at the end. We could do it during these, or if something spiked something in your mind. Oh, I wanted to ask about that. Just chime in the chat, and we'll get it taken care of. Okay, so owner C gives a deed to his son until his son dies. Okay, his son sells his interest of the property to a friend. And what does the interest of the, so when does the interest in the property terminate? Well, you can only sell what you have and what you were given. So if the son got a ownership interest just for his lifetime, it's called a life estate. And when he dies, that's going to go either back to the grantor or it's going to go to someone else, called remainder man. But that's really not what our question is. Our question is, when does this property ownership, this interest in the property, terminate? Okay, when the owner dies, when a son dies, when a friend dies, or it will not terminate? Well, it will terminate. I mean, it says right in the first line there that someone's going to die and it's going to terminate. So it's not when the giver or grantor dies, it's when the receiver or son dies, or when the friend dies, or it will not terminate. Not terminate is not right. D is not right. A is not right. We have a choice here of B and C. And the person that ended up with the owner, you can sell your life estate, but it's only good for as long as that was originally set up for. And it was originally set up for that the son could have it as long as he lived. That's all he could sell to this other friend. And so the correct answer here to number 5 is when the son dies. Okay, that's all you have. That's all you had to sell. Could you sell it? Sure. Why would someone buy something like that? Well, maybe it's a condo in Park City. And now you wouldn't pay $500,000, which is what all the condos are selling for, if you were getting fee simple absolute or total ownership. You only have partial ownership as long as this son is alive. So you might ask him, I mean, do you do like dangerous sports like mountain climbing and that kind of thing? Okay, then I might not expect to own it so long, because if you die, it cancels if I bought it from you. Okay, but so you're not going to get full value. You're not going to get $500,000 for that, but you might get 50,000. You might get 100,000. I don't know. And if you can rent it out for $25,000 a year, you figure this kid's going to live at least, another 10 years, maybe even longer, maybe 50 years. And I can keep renting it out. So, there are reasons why you might buy these different types of odd ownership. And quite frankly, we don't see them that often in your real estate career, except for on the exams, but still, you need to know a door to get your license. And occasionally you might run into something like that, but probably not. Number 6, P leases an apartment for a couple of years, okay? And after 2 years, they have not found a new place to live yet and remain in the property for a few more months. What kind of an estate do they have? Well, before that lease expired, okay, in a 2-year period of time, they had a leasehold estate, okay? It wasn't an estate at will. It wasn't a life estate. There's, we don't really have anything called a renter's estate. And was it a estate of sufferance? Well, that's what we're going to find. That's what we're working on right now. So what it is what kind of estate do they have? Okay. If they overstayed their leasehold and, their leasehold estate, well, it's called a D, estate at sufferance. It's not a renter's estate. It's not a life estate. That gives you the property ownership for, as long as you're there, or as long as you're alive, your life. An estate at will estate at will is like staying in a motel. You go in, you check in, they say, how long will you be staying with us? And you say, well, about a week. I'm planning on being here about a week. Oh, no problem. And then, the president decides to come to this and stay at the motel. So the Secret Service want the whole floor cleared out, and the hotel kicks you out. Well, wait a minute. I told you I wanted to be here a week. Well, you had an estate of sufferance, which means it could be canceled by either party at any time. And so that's what it is. They overstayed their original agreement. So is anyone really suffering? Well, if they're not paying the rent, they're suffering. But, if you continue to pay the rent, it's still in a state of sufferance because you didn't extend the lease. You didn't extend the other agreement. And, this is something you might encounter from time to time, especially when you're taking a test. Let's look at number 7, please. Okay. A transaction where the buyer of the property immediately leases the property back to the original owner is called, is it illegal? Oh, heavens no. Is it a lease sale back? A lease sale back? No, they owned it and sold it and then leased it or kept it back. Is it unethical? No, happens all the time. Is it a sale lease back? That's what it is. It's a D, sale lease back. And one of the more famous ones, when Sears was a big thing, they had an emblem that was on their letterhead, and it was kind of like their trademark. It was their image, and it was a copy of their building. It was the Sears Tower in Chicago. And when Sears started to get in trouble financially, they needed to raise money, and so they sold the Sears Tower. But they didn't move out. They sold it to an investor. It was a European gentleman who bought it. But what happened is that they were able to stay there, but they were able to raise a whole lot of money too, that they needed to sustain their operations. So the correct answer to 7 is D, a sale leaseback. And it's they're fun to put together. Commercial real estate is if you have the chutzpah and the interest and the inclination, this is like a commercial type transaction. But it could be a house. You could sell your house, but we want to stay here because our new home is not finished yet. There were construction delays, so we want to stay another 6 months or something. Those types of deals can be real tricky because the lenders normally, when they give a loan to a purchaser of a property, they want them to to occupy. If they're not going to occupy, it's going to be a rental. There's different requirements for that type of loan. But sale leasebacks, yeah, they're great. They allow a owner to sell a property, raise operating capital for something else they need or something else they want to do, but still stay in your property. Okay. Number 8. Unlike a married couple buying property, if two people who are not married buy property together, they will be what? Will they be joint tenants, tenants in severalty, tenants by entirety, or tenants in common? Well, with the information we have here, they're going to be tenants in common. Tenants in common is kind of the default. If you want to be joint tenants, then you have to, if you want to be a joint tenant, you have to deliberately do that. It's something that you have to state in the transferring document, the deed, and there are different requirements in order for that to happen. Okay, they have to receive the title at the same time, and there's several other requirements there. But tenants in common is the one where you could come in and maybe only have a half interest that you bought from one person or another. In our state, you can also do tenants by entireties. Not all states allow that, but our state allows it. It's joint tenants for married people is really what it is. No one ever asked for it because no one even really knows about it, unless you went to real estate school and then you forgot it because you're not going to see it much. Most people just go in as joint tenants. Joint tenants is if one of the owners dies, and you can have 3 people in joint tenancy. It could be mom and her daughter and her daughter's husband. So there's 3 owners. If mom dies, then the married couple own it alone. If the husband or the wife dies, well, then they own it with mom or their mother-in-law. Okay. So the answer to 8, obviously, like I illustrated, is tenants in common. Tenants in common, the ownerships can come in at different phases or times, and they don't have to be equal. Joint tenancy, you have to be 50-50 or a third if you were the mom and the married couple. Tenants in common, you can have one owner owns 25%, one owner owns 75%. Tenancy by entireties is here, and tenants in severalty is a situation where you usually have just like one owner. You own it alone. Let's go to number 9, please. If 2 people are joint tenants and one of them sells their interest in a property to a third person, the remaining owner and the new owner become what? Landlords? That's not what they're driving at here. Joint tenants with right of survivorship? No, the joint tenancy was broken because one person came into ownership later than the other owner. Okay, well, you've owned it for years and you bought the other person's, usually a married couple, but the other spouse, or maybe they're divorcing and someone else is coming in. A lot of different ways why that could happen. Joint tenancy right of survivorship? No. Tenants in fact, that's a made up term. You're going to be tenants in common. Okay. Tenants in common is the one where you can have unequal pieces of ownership, percentages, but you can also come into title at different times. Okay. Come in and out or whatever. Tenants in common. Okay. And, mentioning commercial a few minutes ago, there's a lot of tenants in common agreements that are used in, I'd say mid-size properties, dollar stores, or these, that you travel through some of these smaller towns. There's a standalone dollar store or dollar type store there. A lot of those buildings are TCs, or tenant in common agreements. Some restaurant buildings, some office buildings, warehouses, a lot of them can be tenants in common, are very common in lots of different types of ownerships. Residential real estate, you do see them, but it really depends on who's buying and how they want it set up. The thing about joint tenancy is you do have the right of survivorship, and that automatically transfers. So if you had a couple, married couple or unmarried couple, that bought a property together and they were in it as joint tenants, and one of them died, unfortunately, the other one automatically owns um, their former partner's half. Okay. It happens automatically. Now, the way you prove that up is you record a death certificate in the county where the property is located. Because you can buy property all over. You can own property in Colorado, Nevada, wherever. But if you don't necessarily have to live there, but if somebody died, the only way you'd know they were died is if a death certificate was put into public record. And that's one of the things that title companies will search out, and they'll find that, and they'll say, well, it was owned by the couple, but one of them passed away. And so now it was joint tenancy, full right survivorship. And so now the ownership goes to the surviving owner, the surviving original owner. Hey, don't you love this stuff? It's so exciting to learn all these different things. I remember when I went through real estate school back in the late 70s and started into business. And I love the fact that you learn all these different things that most people just don't know. Well, that's why you become a realtor. That's how you help them. Now we don't give legal advice. If someone came in and said, well, should I do this or that or the other thing? This is, well, you really need to talk to, because you don't know their situation. I mean, you could have a couple come in, they got these cute little kids and everyone's hugging, loving, and mommy, daddy type stuff. But then you find out later that the husband was not the father of these children. Maybe this lady's husband died and then she remarried this other man. And the money she's using to buy the house, or the money for the purchase of the property that they're all going to live in, really came from her deceased husband's estate. He had a big life insurance policy, so that allowed the new dad to come in, and you don't know the situation. They may not share everything with you. That's why you really shouldn't recommend. You should recommend they talk to a lawyer, is what you should do, because he'll set that up. And if you don't, and then she dies, grandma and grandpa receive the kids from the other guy, and he keeps the house. It's going to be a real mess. We don't advise people on how to take ownership. Okay, next question, please. Here we have a situation where there's 4 brothers and they own a property. Whoop, Dan, where is it? There it is. 4 brothers own a property as joint tenants. Unusual, but not impossible. Remember, I told you joint tenants can be more than just a couple. In this case, it's 4. And the 4 brothers go in and they buy this property together. It has appreciated quite a bit in value since they made the investment to buy it. And one brother wants to sell and get his money out because he needs it. And he has a ready, willing, able buyer that wants to jump in and buy his 25% interest. The others refuse to sign the offer, so what's the proper legal solution? Well, if you end up in a situation where partners don't agree, then which one of these answers is correct? A partition action, a state puratre v, a writ of execution, or exercise the defeasance clause? Well, guys, it's a partition action. When partners can't agree, you're going to have to part the ways. And a judge is going to have to get involved and says, well, can't you guys come to a solution? All right, you're in my courtroom. Look, I got a lot of cases coming up. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this, this, and this. And, maybe they're happy with the ruling and maybe they're not. It doesn't really matter. That's why they ended up in court. It's too bad the 3 other brothers who didn't want to sell, but you could sell that. Now, then what would happen? Well, now we have 4 new owners. Well, they have 1 new owner, right? And 3 original owners. As it pertains to the 3 original owners, they're still joint tenants. But the 4th owner that came in would be a tenant in common. So if the new owner, the 4th owner died, that would go to his 25% would go to the estate. If one of the 3 original owners died, it would go to the other 2 original owners. Interesting. So you could have these layered on top of each other. It's unusual. You probably won't see it, particularly in this particular example, except that you may very well see it on the test. That's why we're going through it tonight. Tonight is about getting you tuned up to pass the test the first time, remember? So you'd go to a partition action, say, Your Honor, we can't decide what, we can't come to a conclusion, so you're gonna have to tell us what to do. Okay. A writ of execution is, that's a court order, usually probably telling someone to vacate or whatever, exercise the defeasance clause and piratere v. Those are terms you do see once in a while. We have some other questions that might cover some of this. So let's get to the next question, number 11. Okay, partition action is correct. In a community property state, and there's community property states are properties that have different than English traditions. And, the original 13 colonies, and then go west, young man, they started going west and whatnot. But when you get into some of the states that were really part of Mexico at one time or another, or were French, had French type ownership or origins, their traditions were different than the England type traditions, English traditions. And so, Wisconsin voted it in, but they were kind of Frenchies anyway up there. So, but anyway, the point is that in a community property state, the rules are a little bit different. Now, the rub for us here in Utah is that the state in which most out-of-state owners that own property in Utah but live in a different state is California. And after California, it's Arizona, and then Idaho, Arizona, and California. And those states have different traditions. And in a community property state, there is a basic distinction. And so what we're looking at here is a property acquired together and a property acquired separately over the duration of the marriage is something that you could think about, but the correct answer is still a little bit further down. Property owned privately versus property owned by the state has nothing. That's a horrible answer. Property acquired during the marriage and property already owned by each party at the time of the marriage. See, what becomes important in a community property state is whether your name is on the title or not, your spouse or your significant other, and some Hollywood celebrities have found out, your long-term live-in partner, and the judge decided, well, you're married anyway, even though you're not really married. Your spouse is in a situation where whether or not their name is on that title or not, was it separate or was it a community property? And that's the problem. So you're going to have to keep your separate properties separate, and your community properties will be yours together. Okay. So if you're in that situation, you know what some of those rules are. I mean, if you have separate properties, both of you do, or maybe one of you does, and you come into this marriage and you buy a property together, that property you bought during the marriage is going to be community property. However, the properties you owned prior could be community property depending on how you handle it. But if you wanted to keep them separate, if you had them rented, you'd want that rent money to go into a separate account. And then if you want to take money out of that and put it in the joint account, that'd be okay. But you wouldn't want it to go into the joint account straight away, because some judge might decide that, well, obviously you wanted to share this ownership. You shared the rent, so we figure you're sharing the ownership as well. We're calling it community property. So property acquired during the marriage and property already owned is a big issue. And maintaining that is a big issue as well. Property acquired during the marriage and property acquired after the marriage. Well, property acquired after the marriage is, not what we're looking at here. I mean, you're not married anymore. So, and then property owned privately versus property owned by the state, that's a junk answer. And then property acquired together and property acquired separately during the duration of the marriage could also be an issue that we would look at as well. But the correct answer to this one, because you have to go with the most correct answer, is property acquired during the marriage and property already owned by party at the time of marriage. Clearly something that they would want to express. Prenups, not a bad idea in some cases. Okay, let's look at number 12. Okay, number 12 says, what does a condominium owner have exclusive interest or actual ownership in? Do you own the party walls? Do you own the shared stairwells? Do you own the shared entrances, or do you own airspace in your own unit? Now we're talking about a condominium, okay, not a townhouse. A townhouse and a condominium could look the same. I mean, they have the upright, they're 2-story, and they're building them all over the valley. And you're looking at that and you're saying, well, that's kind of cool. The building's connected, could be an 8-plex, 4-plex, whatever. But each individual unit is sold as a separate unit. Is it a condo or is it a townhouse? If it's a townhouse, the owners own the dirt underneath the building, underneath their building, okay? If it's a condo, then your ownership interest is quite a bit different, okay? There are common ownership, like the common walls, and you don't own the ground underneath it. The ground underneath it's owned by the association. So actually what you have is, and this one obviously is D, airspace of their unit, okay? So you have it, will it affect how you live there, whether it's a townhouse or whether it's a condominium? No, it doesn't really affect the usability and how much you enjoy and the views and everything else you want out of that. But it could greatly affect the type of loan you can get on that unit. Lenders would rather lend on a townhouse because they don't want to deal with some of the association problems if they end up being an owner in it. And they figure they're better secured when you actually own your dirt under your unit. But, condominiums are quite, prevalent today as well. But lenders might give you a little tiny bit better interest rate on a townhouse than they will on a condo, and it might be easier to get the loan. I don't know. And there are restrictions on townhouses, and a lot of this comes with the FHA. So I mean, conventionals, they can do a lot more. They have a lot more flexibility in the types of buildings they can lend in and whatnot. But FHA has some rules, and if there's too many rentals in a development, they may not be approved FHA. They want a certain percentage of ownership where the people are actually occupying, because they've done their studies and they know that their foreclosure rates are less when people actually have, they're very similar in their design and functionality, but they just have better luck and less association problems with the townhouse. So they like those better, but whatever. You can still get loans on condos. You can still get loans on townhouses. Okay. But it's something to think about. One of the things you guys really need to do is you need to build a group of experts that you use and that surround you. You need a good title company. You need a good lender. Lenders are paramount. You need a good property inspector. You need all these different people that are involved in the transaction. And one of the roles that we play in our industry is the fact that we are the only one in the transaction that is responsible for the whole transaction and responsible to make the whole thing work. And so, the lender's going to do their thing. The home inspector is going to do his thing or her thing. They all have their part to play, but you're the conductor that's conducting all these people and pulling all these talents and abilities and systems together so that it actually closes, whether you're working on the buyer side or seller side, or hopefully you're working, it'd be nice to be on both sides. But if you're working with another agent too, you need to team up with them as well to make sure this deal closes. It's important to their buyer, it's important to your buyer, or it's important to your seller or their seller. It's just, the reason I got in real estate is I wanted to be of more value to people. And the reason why I want to be more valuable to people is if you're more valuable to people, you're going to make more money because you are more valuable to people. And we provide a tremendous service, and we're compensated for that as well. So kudos. All right. Number 13. Okay, here we go. So we've got one more, Dan. Here we go. Here we go. If someone has the ability to use a property once a year for a week at a time, what do they have most likely? Is it a timeshare, periodic lease, lease for years, or a quit claim title? It's a timeshare, guys. That's what a timeshare is. It's something that you come in and, you have a certain amount of usage that you have and a right to use it. Now, this is set up on kind of a time basis. I mean, there are various derivatives of timeshares, and some timeshares are point based, where you get a number of points and you don't have a set year, or there's a set year and that gives you so many points and you can use it at different times and move it around and make your reservations and whatnot. But this is a great definition of a timeshare. It's not a periodic lease. A periodic lease is any kind of lease that has, I mean, could be monthly, you could pay annually, but usually it's a monthly type pay. Lease for years is any lease that has a definite termination date. Lease for years doesn't necessarily have to be for several years. It could be less than that. And a quit claim title it was given by a quit claim deed, and they're give you just as good a title. It's not the quality of title that changes by the type of deed. It's the promises that are made to you from the grantor to you. The one that gives you the most promises is a grantor's deed. And that's what we use primarily here in Utah. Some states use other types of deeds, which give you a little fewer promises, but it's all good. The title company is going to ensure to the bank and also to the buyer that they got good title, and you need to make sure those policies are issued and that they're good quality policies as well. Okay, in our participants, we have a number with us today. Do you guys have any questions about anything you want to talk about? Okay. Hey, it's a great time to get into business. A lot of people are worried, well, interest rates are a little higher. When I first got into business, my first loan that I got on a property was 10%. So, hey, I thought 6% would be fantastic. And that's what rates are now, a little bit of 6, a little bit above. People still need houses. They continue to have children. They need a place to house them. They get married, they get divorced, mom comes to live with them, all kinds of reasons. People are still moving, and they're still buying, they're still selling. And, the market we're entering into, the last time we had, it looks like the type of market we're entering into now is probably around 2008 or so, 2008, that era. And, gosh, I did 150 short sales in that period of time. It could be, you're going to have to be proficient in making deals work and getting people to believe in you and providing great service. And we operate differently depending on how the market changes and, the various opportunities that are given to us. So, you got to be prepared for all kinds of markets. And the one we're entering into, it's a great time to get into business because people need you. And the market we just came out of, where, they could put up a for sale by owner side and have 6 people banging on their door trying to buy the property. Now, whether they really qualified or not, or whether they were legit or not, is a whole different issue. But it's a great time to get into business. We also, when I was on the board of directors of the Salt Lake board, last time we had a market kind of like this, and we lost half our membership. We went from 8,000 agents down to around 4. And now we're a little over between 9,000 and 10,000 agents. And we'll see that dwindle down a little bit. It doesn't really matter. It won't affect your success. If you do the work, if you bless the lives, you'll make the money. Well, thanks for being with us tonight. Happy to answer any questions. Dan, would you throw up my phone number for the students tonight? Here is my secret cell phone number, okay? Which is not so secret. I answer it myself. Hey, if I don't answer it, well, I wasn't available. But, don't text me and say, hey, can I call you? Just call, okay? And I'd love to talk to you and help you. And I don't see it up here. Okay, I'll give it to you. 801-556-8000. There it is. Thank you. 801-556-8000. And thanks for being with us tonight. We care about you guys. We want you to pass the test the first time. We want you to have a successful career. And we have a lot of tips available for you to do that. Call me if I can be of help. Happy to help you anyway. I get maybe 2-3 calls a week from people that have a question or have a concern. You're not alone. Thanks for attending our school. Thanks, Dan, for being with us tonight as well. And we'll see you out there. Remember, bless lives, make money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Danny, Professor of Realty. If you enjoyed this review, we have another entire review for the National Real Estate License Exam that has helped people pass the exam 85% or more on their first try. It's called Prep My Exam. Check it out in the comments below in the description of the video. If you enjoyed this video, please give Rick and I some appreciation by clicking on the thumbs up on the like. We're here to help you, so help us help you by liking and subscribing.